Hey everybody, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Boris TV tutorial. And as you'll always hear me say, every shot needs some kind of work done to it before you can output it to tape, whether it's some color correction or, in this case, a lens flare effect. I can't tell you how many times I've added a simple lens flare to a shot and had a client say to me, man, that director of photography was a genius to get that shot. It looks awesome with that lens flare. And then I tell them that it's not their director of photography that got that fantastic looking lens flare. It was their genius motion graphics designer that got them that fantastic looking shot. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how adding a lens flare effect can really enhance a shot and make a good shot great. Okay, so let's quit out of QuickTime and let's Command Tab into Adobe's After Effects CS 5.5. Now, because I am using CS 5.5, I'm going to want to make sure that I order the 64-bit version of Boris Continuum Complete 8. Now, that is the case for all of you CS5 and 5.5 users. For anyone using pre-CS5, you're going to want to make sure that you order the 32-bit version of Boris Continuum Complete 8. The difference between the two packages? Absolutely nothing. It just depends on what version of After Effects you happen to be running. Okay, so let's get our clip into After Effects to start working with. So I'm just going to navigate over to the project window. I'm going to press Command and I on the Mac, Control and I for all of you Windows users. I'm going to select my Video Tracks HD clip. I'm going to say Open. And let's create a new composition based on the properties of this clip by simply taking it and dragging it down here onto the Create New Composition button. Now, let's apply Lens Flare 3D. Now, something that's important to keep in mind about Lens Flare 3D is that now, inside of Boris Continuum Complete 8, there really is only one lens flare effect that you're going to want to use for all of your lens flare visual effects, and that is Lens Flare 3D. Now, if you happen to have legacy projects that you have Lens Flare or Lens Flare Advanced plugins applied in, what you're going to want to make sure of is that you navigate right over here to BCC 8 Obsolete. You'll drop that down and you'll see that in here is the Lens Flare and Lens Flare Advanced plugins, like I said, in case you happen to need to get in and adjust any legacy products. What's important to keep in mind about Lens Flare 3D is that it incorporates everything from Lens Flare and Lens Flare Advanced to therefore render them obsolete moving forward. So like I said, always use Lens Flare 3D when creating new projects and working on from here on forward. Okay, so I'm simply going to twirl back up BCC 8 Obsolete. We're going to navigate up to BCC 8 Lights. I'm going to come down to Lens Flare 3D, and I'm simply going to take it and I'm going to drag it right down here and drop it onto the clip. As soon as I let go, you'll see that my lens flare has now appeared in my composition, and I have the effects control window open, and you'll see that I have the parameters for Lens Flare 3D ready to be adjusted. Now, one thing I want to point out when we start working with Lens Flare 3D is that it is a perfect example of one of the things that I love about Boris Continuum Complete 8, and that is the absolute staggering amount of presets that comes standard with the package. You'll see if I navigate up to the preset dropdown, I don't even know how many are in here. There looks like there's got to be at least 40 to 50 presets in here for you to get in and start working with the effect. Now, of course, because I mentioned that, I'm actually going to choose a preset to start working with this effect. I'm going to navigate all the way back up to the top, and I'm going to choose Bright Star with Light Fog. Once I select it, you'll see in a second here the preset is now applied, and I'm ready to get in and make some modifications to the lens flare before we actually animate it. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn two of the parameters off. I'm going to navigate right down here, and I'm going to turn off Glows, and I'm going to turn off Stripe. And you'll see that by turning both of those off, I'm now left with what I would consider to be more of a standard lens flare that you'd actually see captured through the camera. Now, what I'm going to do to enhance this a little bit is I'm actually going to turn two parameters on that weren't on before. I'm going to turn Hollows on, and I'm going to turn Faded Ring on. You'll see now that we're getting a very J.J. Abrams type of lens flare effect, something that really mimics a Hollywood-style lens flare. So let's get in and let's animate the actual flare moving across the screen. Now, there's a couple ways that I could do this. Depending on what I wanted the actual flare to track, I could even navigate right down here to the bottom, and you'll see that I actually have built-in motion tracker technology inside of Lens Flare 3D. A great way to get in, and depending on, like I said, what you need the lens flare to follow, if it happened to be all over the place on the screen, a simple way to get in and track what exactly is going on. But as you'll see here, I'm just going to turn the effect off for 1 second. As you'll see, this is a very straight move. So I'm not going to use motion tracker in this case. But like I said, if you happen to have a move, like let's say this light was moving all over the place, motion tracker is a great tool to get in and use. And like I said, built right into the effect. Okay, so I'm simply going to come back to the beginning. I'm going to turn the effect back on. I'm going to navigate down to light source. I'm going to drop that down, and you're going to see that we're using the built-in light source, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to drop down built in, and you'll see that we can now get in and adjust the XY position. Once I click on my little target, I'm just going to set it right dead in the middle of the sun that's rising, just above the horizon. There we go, very nice. And what we're going to do is also add a keyframe for the XY position. I'm going to navigate all the way down to the end, and let's take the lens flare and let's drag it right out here. We're going to get it pretty close. That's looking pretty nice just like that. Now there's something else that's going on here, and you'll see that because obviously the sun is rising, the flare we don't want to be as intense right at the start as we're going to want to have it as time moves on. So let's adjust the flare a little bit to mimic what is actually going on in the shot. I'm going to come up and I'm going to add a keyframe for global intensity. What I'm going to do is also set the global intensity to be 33. So you'll see we have a very slight flare that's going to start things off. What I want to have happen is by the time we get down to the end, I want this value to double, to be about 66. So you can see much nicer and much more realistic as the effect goes. Now, a couple other things going on here. You'll see that we have this great rays effect that's going on coming out of our light source. The only issue that we have is that it's not actually rotating as it moves. So let's adjust that as well. What we're going to do is navigate right over here to rays. I'm going to drop rays down, and I think that there's a little bit too much rays going on. So let's just adjust that. I'm going to come over to the scale, and I'm going to change it from 0.18, just minor, to 0.12. You'll see, nice. So we just got a little bit of the rays sticking out of the light source. What I'm also going to do is come over, I'm going to add a keyframe for rotation. I'm going to jump down to the end, and we're going to have it do one full revolution. Now you're going to see that when I come back to the beginning, if you watch, you can see the rays rotating around as our lens flare follows the sun rising. Very nice. Now there is one last thing that I do want to do to this shot, and I want to add one of my favorite parameters in as well, and that is the chroma fan. I'm going to turn the chroma fan on, and you're going to see it's just very slight. It's almost hard to see. What we'll do is we'll just navigate down a little bit here, and I'm going to drop down my chroma fan parameters, and what we want to do is adjust the scale of that chroma fan to be about 2. Very nice. You can see now how it's really starting to reflect out at the top and the bottom. I'm going to simply add a keyframe there, and I want this to start right down at nothing, so that as the effect moves, you're going to see the chroma fan start to build out. Now, of course, something else is going on here, and that is that if the rays are rotating as much as they are, this chroma fan, you would think, would rotate as well. So let's adjust that so that it rotates. What we're going to do is simply add a keyframe for angle. I'm going to come all the way down to the end here, and I'm going to set a revolution of 1 so that it matches exactly what is going on with our rays. And you'll see now that as I scroll through, we now have a very realistic looking lens flare that looks like it was shot like that. Now what most people might think is, well, these rays look like they're rotating a little fast, and this chroma fan looks like it's rotating a bit too fast. But what's important to keep in mind is that if this was just a regular shot of the sun rising, the movement would be ever so slight. But because this is a time-lapse shot, I'm just going to preview this here. That is why I want to speed this up so that it almost looks like it's going a bit too fast, so that it mimics exactly what is going on in the background and creates an even more realistic looking composite. And looking at this shot now, you would never know that this lens flare wasn't there on the original shot. So I hope you see, like I said in the intro, every shot that you work on is going to need a little bit of something, whether it's color correction or maybe it needs a fantastic lens flare from Boris Continuum Complete 8 to help take this great shot and make it look extraordinary. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to support@borisfx.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.